I'm Tamara Zenobia, an ancient and amazing goddess brought to the earth to share my gifts as a healer and alchemist with all who desire to learn how to master the flesh and embody complete wellness within. But first, in order to do this, I am learning to master these gifts myself. You see, mastering the earth body is not a simple task. But ever since that I was a child, I dreamed and imagined I was a goddess with supernatural abilities to heal myself and everything around me. Although at some point in my adolescence I became absorbed with the affairs of the flesh, quite naturally, and forgot about my childhood fantasies of being a goddess. I didn't really consciously begin pursuing the calling to become a healer until my early 30s. And so that is where I will begin telling my story. The journey to becoming a healer started in 2005 after a series of traumatic and life-changing experiences. I felt this deep intuitive call to go to France. I can't explain it. I just heard this voice inside and it said, "You've got to go to France." And so I followed it. Lo and behold, when I got to France, I experienced a change within myself that completely changed my perceptions about God, myself, and life. Everything wasn't black and white anymore. I began to listen to my own inner voice. I started hearing the messages coming to me. It was a deep knowledge about music and sound and how music and sound could heal people on an atomic level. I could see visually in my mind how I had the ability with my voice and intention to heal people and to help them to heal themselves. I didn't have any formal education in this subject. This information just came to me. I remember dreaming one night, and this dream was so real. These beings came to me in my dream and showed me how to heal people with my voice. They showed me how the body emits a frequency, and I just needed to match this frequency with my own voice, and that would help people to heal. At the time, this teaching was just too grand to grasp. I I just didn't know what to do. But over the course of time, I developed myself based on the visions that I had received, and I began to practice. After 5 years in France, I returned back to the United States and I started working on family and friends, and even animals and plants. Mind you, I was still in the beginning phases of this gift, and so I haven't yet to this day reached the enormous potential that I saw in my vision, but I know that I am on the right track and I have already done some amazing things in my travels. After a few months of being back home, I began to see myself driving across the country. And I knew that I would do it. I just didn't know when or how. I wanted to drive across the country and share what I had been learning as an intuitive healer. I also wanted this journey to be intuitive. I wanted to experience the faith and deep inner knowing that so many of the world's greatest healers and prolific masters experienced, and the only way to learn, in my opinion, was to throw myself out there and allow myself to be guided by my deep inner desire and passion and my intuition. I finally committed myself to a date of January 15th, 2012. The funny thing was, having just returned home to the US, I didn't have a job, a car, or money. Repatriating back to the US after 5 years in France had proved to be challenging, and I was having a hard time reestablishing myself. I ended up in Seattle, Washington, where I stayed with my brother and had some help from him. And so I put out this intention that if this journey was really a good idea and it was a good thing for me to do, all that I needed would be there for me. And I released myself from the burden and the stress of trying to figure out exactly how I was going to make all this happen. And on January 15th, 2012, I left Seattle in the middle of the worst snowstorm they'd had in years, with $140 and the 2003 Mercury Villager van that my brother had given me to begin my journey. I decided to call this journey the Journey of Remembrance. I wanted to remember and to call on the deep knowledge that was buried inside me. I knew that my own DNA was encoded with secrets waiting to be uncovered, memories from past lives, the collective memories of my ancestors, memories of the universe inside and outside my body. I wanted to remember who I came to this earth to be before being born into flesh and forgetting. The plan initially was to journey from Seattle to Asheville, North Carolina. In addition to self-discovery, I'd also planned to share my knowledge by giving classes and concerts and workshops and do healing work within the communities that I passed through. In the end, I did everything I set out to do. I traveled alone, but I was never alone. I would meet kind strangers who took me into their homes and allowed me to stay with them. The journey itself was nothing short of a miracle. Every step of the way, I had the opportunity to meet some of the most amazing people. When I started the journey, I really didn't know what to expect. All I knew is that when I drove into each town, I didn't know a single soul. And when I left, people were asking me to stay. I felt really blessed to make such wonderful friends. I ended my tour in November 2014. This time, I decided to return to Alaska, which is my birthplace, to spend time with my family, my parents who live there now, who I really hadn't seen since I left for France some 8 years earlier. I stayed home in Alaska for about a year and a half. The call to travel was so strong, though. While being a van dweller may not be for everyone, I absolutely loved it. The freedom, it was intoxicating. However, at this time, I was dependent on my family for support, and I didn't want to be a burden. So I decided to take a chance again and hit the road, in hopes that being back in the lower 48 would prove to be more successful in terms of finding work and stability. I went to Seattle with the idea in mind that I'd have my van sent to me from Alaska rather quickly, and then I would hit the road from there and I would begin performing and giving workshops and classes again throughout the country. I never did make it to Asheville that first time. My tour ended in Tucson, Arizona, so maybe I could make it this time. But that's not what happened. I ended up staying in Seattle again. I was not able to get my van shipped to me from Alaska, and after 1 year of trying to establish myself, I ended up homeless. This was a real turning point for me and a real place of deep healing that I didn't even know I needed. I put my dreams of becoming a full-time healer and artist on the back burner and pursued the normal life. Long story short, I went from homeless to making 6 figures within 2 years. I came to live a relatively comfortable life. In my mind, I was recouping from the trauma of being homeless and the perceived failure of my vision and dreams, getting a bird's eye view of the reality so many people face and that so many others take for granted. I felt for a while that I really needed to rest. I needed to slow down and stop running and going and doing and just live and relax and enjoy being able to take care of myself. Finally, running a small business while not having the resources to expand is very tiring. So I did relax, but I kept my dream tucked away in the back of my mind, doing a little here and a little there while still working at my full-time job and saving money. I even managed to secure an opportunity to move into my own healing art studio and gallery. A dream come true. Now, there was nothing stopping me from fulfilling my dreams. I could see my vision and dreams finally coming to reality after all this time. Then the pandemic hit our world. And not only that, something else had been happening with me, health wise, just after starting a new job in 2019. I had some mysterious symptoms come over me, the main one being I couldn't eat. I started out with chest pains, and then one day I woke up to a burning stomach and a knot in my throat. Out of nowhere, for 2 weeks, I was only able to juice my food. I slowly recovered from this, but I was never able to eat more than a handful of food at a time, and sometimes a handful of food was all I could eat all day. Over the course of the next 2 years, I went to see many doctors, taking many tests, each one ending in, "There's nothing wrong with you," based on blood tests, heart tests, all these echograms and x rays. It was daunting. I have been a healthy person, exercising and taking care of my body, even in the midst of my challenging times. Nothing had ever been wrong with me like this, and not even symptoms of things that, sometimes we do ignore. I didn't have anything. So, why was this happening to me? These episodes of not being able to eat anything would repeat itself 2 more times within this period. Each time, I would slowly work back up to being able to eat, but very little at a time. All the while, things seemed to be getting worse. I think the best way to express the magnitude of this story is to finish with the end. So, I'll start by saying, while the job that I currently have is a great job, working with great people and doing great work, and I say the job that I currently have because I'm still there, it really isn't where I'm meant to be. When I took my job, I knew that my days were numbered. Not because I was a bad worker, but because I knew I was meant to be somewhere else, doing something else, more meaningful, more passionate to me. This job was to help me to establish myself and get financially grounded, and that it did. But as my time progressed and I got more comfortable with my job, the idea of being able to make the decision to leave it grew further and further away. My fears were, how would I pay my bills without a steady paycheck? Would my business thrive? I can't be homeless. And what would my family say if I quit my job? These fears were so deep that I wasn't even aware of the amount of anxiety behind it. I just thought I was being wise and prudent. Of course, I wasn't going to quit my job. That would be ridiculous, right? Meanwhile, my symptoms stayed the same, even after consulting and working with a naturopathic doctor. I was taking herbs and cleansing, and everything that should have worked was not working. I was even getting acupuncture once a week. All of these things helped a little, but every week the symptoms would return, and I felt like I was running in quicksand. So at the new year, I decided to embark on 30 days of deep sound healing within myself. I had tried this before, but it didn't seem to work. I think the difference this time was that I was energetically closer to facing the truth. This time, I would be willing to listen and to do what I was guided to do without fear. One day, 3 days after this 30-day journey started, I went for a walk. And as I was walking, I started this conversation with myself that went something like this. I said to myself, wait a minute. This is ridiculous. You are afraid. You can't live afraid. Spirit will never fail you. Spirit will take care of you. How could you think that you will fail? And then I said to myself, oh my God, you're right. You're absolutely right. And in that moment, it was as if everything just became clear to me. This feeling of release of fear flowed over my body, and I went directly home, wrote a letter of resignation, and by the following week, these deep chest pains that I had been feeling disappeared. My digestive issues nearly cleared, and each week they get better and better. I feel better than I felt in a long time. I've even picked up my exercise routine again. I have the energy and the morale to do it. I'm beyond happy, and I'm even more excited to pick up where I left off with my business. I had broken the course of fear that had come over me while I experienced homeless. The fear of failure. Can you imagine that sometimes sickness is not what it seems? The things we experience of illness in our bodies are not always what they seem. We spend billions of dollars every year on medicines and services to cure us, but what if the cure were sometimes maybe more often than we can imagine just a simple decision, a life-changing decision to stop lying to ourselves about who and what we really are and to start living the life that we want to live on our terms. There's a prolific healer, and she had made a video which I watched and which panged in my soul upon hearing of it. And she had said, liars don't heal. And she went on to say something like, you can eat all the wheatgrass and drink all the goji berries and juice kale that you want to drink and eat. But if you're lying to yourself, those things won't work. And that resonated. And every day I think of it. Every day I thought of it. But I still was not able to make the decision until one day on my own healing journey, I said to myself, what are you afraid of? And why are you lying to yourself about it? So, April 1st, I will return to my work as a full-time healer and artist, an actress. I will live my life on my terms 100%, and I will be the best healer I know I can be, armed with knowledge that life is not black and white. There are all sorts of things that make us who we are. There are all sorts of things that cause us to be sick or that cause us to do things that make us sick. Getting to the bottom of these things is a source of real healing that could change our world for the better. Imagine a world no longer living in fear, a world no longer making decisions out of fear. Imagine the innovation that could come from a spirit of freedom, peace, and love from deep within ourselves. In the end, what I would like to say is, I hope this story ignites someone out there to believe in themselves and their dreams and cause them to live without fear. It is scary, but that is the journey. To learn to navigate in this world amidst fears and distractions, trials and tribulations, with confidence, knowing we can overcome and master our environment in such a way that brings balance to ourselves and everything around us in spite of all these things. Namaste. The God in me sees the God in you.